Hey guys, what's up? I got everybody here from TMI. Don't forget to write us an email at tmipodcast2018. That's tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Also, check us out on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. Just use the numbers, don't spell it out.
Ooh, don't forget Facebook.com/TMI podcast 2018.
Follow us on the Apple Podcast app. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review.
All you YouTubers out there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, TMI Podcast 2018. Look for the popcorn bucket.
That's right. Also, check us out on Spotify and the Google Play Music app for all you Android users. Follow us and subscribe everywhere. We appreciate it. We're doing it for you guys, the fans. Thank you.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Dave Odinson Warhowski, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Hey, welcome back, everybody.
Hey, we're here.
We missed you.
We did.
Thank you once again for tuning in
Yes.
week after week after week.
Yeah, and as Dave says up top, we're doing it for you, the fans, but just as much we're doing it for ourselves.
We are doing it for ourselves, but we're
If this
glad that
wasn't
you...
fun, why bother,
Exactly. The one thing I noticed, speaking about that up front, is we don't mention the Instagram account at all, and that's where like 90% of our graphics come from. So
We've really got, but also we also have two members who have long since departed, so that is dated in pretty much every way that you could think of.
It's still a nice lead-in. I enjoy it.
It is. It's very nicely done.
Yes, indeed.
But yes, we do have an Instagram following.
And it's growing. So each week we put up a little graphic. We have a little fun with it, with the two different movies that we talk about. So check us out.
Yeah.
I believe it's TMI Podcast 2018.
So this week, we've got a couple of linked movies, as we always try to do, between our main feature and our classic feature. These two are going to be directed by the same guy, Drew Goddard.
Goddard? Is it Goddard or Goddard?
It's Goddard. Actually, it's Goddard. I was looking at an interview with him and Joss Whedon around Cabin in the Woods, and Joss was pronouncing it Goddard, so I assume that what Joss says is correct.
I guess Joss Whedon's word is gold.
I guess, it's the difference between croissant and croissant.
Right. What side of the pond?
Tomato, he answers to the same, I bet.
Potato, French fries.
So as always, though, we've got some news.
We do have some news. We tend to kind of dwell on the negativity stuff, but this week I want to let you know that our friend James Gunn is unemployed no more.
Ooh!
He's got himself a job. And it's funny. So last week we talked about this whole idea of villain-themed movies, and the one thing we forgot was Suicide Squad.
I think we're the only ones that forgot.
Well, maybe there's a reason we tried to forget it. But anyways, DC has hired James Gunn to not only write, but to direct Suicide Squad 2. So are your expectations a little bit higher now for the sequel?
Actually, no.
Yes, same here. No, still no.
So if we recast,
be written and directed by Spielberg, and my expectations would not be any higher.
I have to say that it might elevate it. I mean, he's got such a unique kind of take in what he did with Guardians. So we'll see. I mean, as long as DC is hands off and just kind of lets him do his thing, then who knows?
The interesting thing would be, to me, is who's coming back in the cast.
Well, I'm pretty sure in this day and age that every one of these actors probably signed a multi-million, movie deal with them. You know, they're probably tied to these characters for the next 20 years. But then again, you never know. I mean, we got multiple Joker movies coming out.
But, you know, Jared Leto was pretty vocal in the fact that what Suicide Squad actually became was not
not what he wanted.
So apparently he filmed enough to do a standalone Joker movie for Suicide Squad, and about 90% of it was cut from the final.
Well, they could easily reinsert that into the new movie.
Probably could. He wouldn't have to show up.
You would never know the difference.
The movie's half done.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So I thought that was interesting that, you know, I mean, Marvel stood by their guns. No pun.
No, they didn't. They didn't.
No, they didn't. But DC stepped in, swooped in, saw the wayward
and took him.
So
did the same with Joss. Once he left after Avengers Age of Ultron, he did some rewrites for Justice League.
You're right.
So the rumor becomes reality.
Yeah.
There you go. So there's that. The other thing is, I know Mike has been plowing through Iron Fist on Netflix, and you seem to have developed a little bit of a crush on Iron Fist's girlfriend there.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And I'm glad to see that she's going to be available.
She will definitely be available because they just announced they canceled it. Iron Fist is being canceled after 2 seasons, which maybe not a bad thing because, well, all right, so take into account that Marvel's really gearing up for this streaming service. So are they one by one going to start pulling these shows off Netflix and then just relaunching them on their own streaming service?
But it was Netflix that canceled it, right? It wasn't Marvel that pulled the plug.
It was both of them.
Oh.
I think they both kind of agreed with it. It was out of the 4. It was kind of like a little bit of a straggler. But, I mean, if you still got Luke Cage going on, I mean, we all know, you know, in the comic universe, these 2 guys fought side by side as Power Man and Iron Fist. Heroes for
Iron
hire.
Fist, in season 2 of Luke Cage, there was an episode where Iron Fist guests throughout, and the term Power Man and Iron Fist is thrown around in that episode.
So there you go. So, you know, cancel his show, bring him into Luke Cage and rebrand it. Could very well happen. Could not. Who knows? Agreed.
Because it really does. With all these shows, it's really too much sometimes, especially with this last season of Luke Cage. It just seemed to go on and on. Where a 13-episode show could have easily, the same story could have been told maybe 5 or 6 episodes.
I think that's the one complaint we've had with most of these Netflix shows. You know, even Maniac, which was only 10, but easily could have been 8 or 1.
Yeah, a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, 1 and done, please. And it still boggles my mind that is getting rave. I mean, I can't see a single person who doesn't like it except for the 3 of us. We stand alone.
It's true. It's true.
So, that's crazy.
I've not seen a negative review on it.
Yeah, no, people love it.
And I saw something that's attached to our last week's confessional question, which was, which Marvel villain do you think should get his own movie? And this was in response to Venom doing so well. And one of the ones that I threw out there, wasn't my final choice, was Morbius, the living vampire. And I saw it's in
development.
With Jared Leto.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So that's part of Sony's, I think, master plan, is they're trying to build their own universe that coexists with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but with the characters that they have.
Yeah, Spider-Man. He's just around the corner. You can't see him.
So we've got Morbius. What else did I hear? Black Cat, Silver Sable. All these second, third tier Spider-Man characters are being looked at now by Sony.
Well, I think that Sinister 6 has been bandied about for quite some time.
Yes, it has.
So
they were sort of building towards it,
right? I thought that.
It would be like the Avengers of the Sony.
Yeah, well, the Suicide Squad of the Marvel universe. Lucasfilm has shut down a fan-made version. I guess these guys were out making Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. I think it was a video game, and it was a pretty long-running comic series by Dark Horse. They shut it down. Disney's really kind of taken a hard line with this Lucasfilm the last couple of years. As somebody who kind of made my career doing fan art of Star Wars, and I know a lot of people do, and Lucas has always kind of encouraged that. Now Disney's really clamping down big time. Even though Star Wars Celebrations, they actually have a whole fan movie award, which Lucas looks at and reviews and basically gives people awards for it. So I don't know. It's sounding like Disney's really just taking a hard line with this. That's all I have.
Let's get into this week's film. Again, a mouthful of a title.
Not quite the house.
You've really got to think about before you say it, because you don't want to screw it up. Bad Times at the El Royale. Yeah, before we make too much fun of the title, it is really kind of like a throwback to like an old crime novel that you might find on a drugstore shelf. That kind of a lurid title.
A very, very pulpy.
Yeah. And it fits, it does fit
Pedigree,
the story.
yeah.
What else would you call it? Some people might end up confusing it with Fast Times at the El Royale.
Fast Times at the El Royale.
Bad Time at Ridgemont High. But
I like it.
so what we've got here is it's a 60 set movie. I would put it at maybe 67 or 68.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got really the only point of reference.
Maybe even 69.
It is 69.
Oh, it is 69.
Yeah.
Like right on the dot?
That's on the dot, yes.
Wow. Okay. I mean, yeah, you did get some really outside of just the clothing and, the set pieces. You get little bits and pieces of television footage of Nixon and what I'm guessing was the Manson murders alluding to. They didn't really get into
a
it.
fictionalized kind of
Account.
reimagining of the Manson murders.
Right. But yeah, it was, okay, 69 it is.
So we're at the El Royale Hotel, and that's where this whole movie is based. And this is a hotel that's right on the middle of the state border between Nevada and California. And the hotel has seen better days because its gambling license has been taken away, so nobody comes anymore. But it used to be a haven for not only gamblers, but celebrities. So they've got pictures of Marilyn Monroe up on the walls and various others. But the place is a ghost town. And for some reason, we have 4 different strangers that are converging on this hotel in the beginning of the movie. We've got Jeff Bridges playing Father Flynn, who is a priest.
Which I think is cool because that's his name in Tron, Flynn.
Which you brought up before, and I was hoping that there might be some more of a connection, maybe.
Yeah. Well, what, he's going to jump on a light cycle?
Then we've got Darlene Sweet, who is a rhythm and blues singer who works in Reno, but can't afford to stay in Reno, so she's at a cheaper hotel, the El Royale. Then we've got Laramie Seymour Sullivan, who is a vacuum salesman, played by John Hamm.
Or is he?
And then we have Emily Summerspring, played by Dakota Johnson, famously from the 50 Shades of Grey movies.
Yeah, that was about her only claim to fame, right?
So, yeah, she's kind of a hippie chick, not flighty, but like an aggressive hippie chick.
Yes.
So she does not take crap from anyone. And then we have Miles Miller, who is working the desk at the El Royale.
Out of all these guys, he was my favorite character. Played by Lewis Pullman, who is Bill Pullman's brother.
Really?
Mm.
I didn't realize that.
Little brother.
So even before the setup of these strangers, you have a flashback of sorts in the very beginning of the movie where Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreation.
He's like almost unrecognizable because you don't really...
Completely, because the camera is showing the full length of his hotel room, and it seems to be one solid shot. You do see a cut at some point in there, but it is a very long take.
And it's weird because it reminded me so much of like a one-person play where you just had the stage set because the camera doesn't move at all. It is center stage, and you just see everything transpiring from him coming out. Even like when he's outdoors, he leaves the door open so you can see what he's doing outside. Yep. So, yeah, it was kind of an interesting intro.
He is carrying a mysterious bag into the room with him. You see him proceed to pretty much destroy the room. He rips up the carpet,
tears everything
takes up the floorboards. He puts the bag in the floorboards, probably buries it below the floorboards, and puts everything back together, only to be shot by a visitor to his room as soon as everything is kind of copacetic again.
Yeah, which I think we can all relate to if we've ever stayed at a motel.
Being shot?
All of it. I mean, I've got treasure.
Ripping up floorboards, splinters in your finger. Yeah.
Exactly. I always travel with a hammer and nails because you never know when you're going to have to bury something.
So we figure that when all these strangers, a few decades later, converge on the hotel, that it has to do, in some part at least,
in some part,
that's buried. So, and this is one of these convoluted movies that it's going to be very difficult to talk about without just running around in circles and confusing everyone. So hopefully you've seen this movie and are listening along with us. If you haven't, we're going to spoil some things. So
yeah, see, this is what I'm going to say right now, which this is one of those movies that really makes me regret the spoiler format we kind of established with this show, because I truly think you need to experience this spoiler-free. We all went in knowing basically what you just told us. Nothing more than what you see in the trailers, nothing more than what you see in a couple of interviews. And it's a fun trip, and I just think that it needs to be experienced without spoilers. So if you have not seen this movie, jump ahead to our Cabin in the Woods review, and then come back. Mike and I, we saw this in an advanced screening during New York Comic Con. And again, when you're seeing it with people who we didn't pay to see it, and we knew that there was a Q&A with the cast and the director afterwards. So I think sometimes that actually maybe changes your approach to watching this movie. You don't want to hate it, because now you got the creators in the room going, "Hey, what'd you think of our movie?" And you're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I didn't get that part at all.
Yeah, exactly. What were you going for here? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that really changed it for us.
Well, you do sort of go through with the red carpet glow, right?
Yeah, we got free popcorn and water.
Yeah, it was my first movie premiere.
In this day and age where everything's a sequel or a superhero flick, a movie like this is maybe sometimes gets lost. And even though it's got a stellar cast, and I'm not a huge John Hamm fan. I never watched more than one episode of Mad Men, but I loved him in this movie. And I liked him immensely as a human being when he was being interviewed. He was so self-deprecating, and it was just, to me, it kind of changed my perception, listening to the director and listening to the actors involved and what they brought to this project. So
this movie compared to, say, Venom, like it's maybe the difference between a Big Mac and a scone. It's got a very limited.
Is a Venom the scone?
But the ones who love the scone really love the scone.
Yeah, but this is not really a movie. Like, I don't necessarily dwell in the noirish pulp. It just doesn't. Usually, it doesn't get me. But this movie was, and I think a lot of it has to do with the actors, that they brought it all.
And I think you're right, Jeff. I mean, part of this was it was the lady from Rotten Tomatoes that was moderating sort of that panel, and she was very biased towards the movie.
Well, I think that's part of her job, is to sell that to the audience, to go out there. They wanted us to be ambassadors, to go out there, post this, share the media pages or whatever, because again, it's all about opening weekend for movies like this. But it's getting great word of mouth. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it beat Venom this week, but I'll stump for it. It's got good pedigree. I mean, Drew Goddard, excuse me. He comes from a TV background, so I think he's used to dealing with a lot of character personalities. Every one of these characters gets a chance to shine. So, and we can go through it now, because I'll get off my little soapbox.
And it is kind of set up, introduce each character individually. And it doesn't really go in a linear fashion. It's kind of like a Pulp Fiction where it jumps around in time.
Perfect. Do we want to even say it's Tarantino-esque? I think Mike and I both came out agreeing that this has a lot of Tarantino.
Yeah, just the sets, even
the pacing. You're right. The jumping from once they all get their rooms, now you start getting backstories, and now you start seeing overlaying. Oh, well, this is how this character got here, and she's not really who you think she is, and she's not really doing what you think she's doing. And I definitely came away thinking this was very influenced by Quentin Tarantino.
And the use of title cards as well. So maybe we should tackle it like that. That might be the easiest way, just to go character by character.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Follow along with the plot.
Yep. Let's start with John Hamm himself then.
So John Hamm,
really is,
Laramie Seymour
Sullivan, which is a mouthful in and of itself.
Who presents himself as really a Midwestern hickish kind of that salesman kind of a mentality, who's borderline racist. Badly, he wants to rent the honeymoon suite. But we find out that Mr. Sullivan is not who he appears to be, which is the case with everybody in this movie. He is actually an FBI agent. See him a little bit later in his room after he debugs the entire room, and it is bugs.
Yeah, I think he finds like 15 or 20.
And he's looking for a piece of film that they're very interested in getting.
This is very much the MacGuffin of the movie.
He starts to look around the hotel. He goes back to the lobby after being in his room for a while. He sees in the maintenance closet Miles Miller, who is the check-in guy that we mentioned before, who's got a needle up his arm, and he's in some kind of heroin-induced stupor. Right. So he's not going to get any resistance from him. He goes to do a little bit more investigating, and he finds a secret passage behind the rooms. And every room has a two-way mirror each room can be spied upon.
Yeah, I want to say the old school motel. It's almost like an L or a V shaped with the main lobby in the center. And Miles did tell them that the one side was completely closed off, so they were all kind of along the same corridor.
And so at the very end of this corridor, the secret corridor behind the rooms, so it's kind of like an observation deck almost, where you could set up a camera very easily on any of these windows. And there's a little
creepy voyeurism going on, yeah.
There's a camera set up at the very end of the hallway, and that's where he pulls the film out. I think the film that he's looking for is actually still in the camera, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
He pulls it right out of there. And as we get further into the movie, this shows in a compromising position a famous, we assume is a politician.
Yeah, they say it's a senator. They imply, well, they come right out and say it's a senator.
So could it be Bobby Kennedy? Maybe?
Right. Yeah, I think they left it a little vague. And I think when we saw the Q&A afterwards, I think Goddard actually said that they purposely left it vague because they didn't want that to become like a major plot point. It was just the fact that he was looking for the film itself. They didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts of who actually it was. But yeah, you're led to believe that it was a Kennedy.
So as John Hamm is pulling this film out of the camera, he also notices by going by Emily Summerspring's room that she is pulling a bound and gagged figure out of the trunk of her car and dragging her into her room. So John Hamm stops to look at what's going on here. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like it's a kidnapping victim. It's a younger girl that's tied in a chair. And
unconscious.
And so he views this, and when he makes the call to the FBI, that, oh, by the way, it looks like there's a kidnapping in effect going on here. They say, forget about it. Ignore it. You're there.
Stick to your protocol.
So of
do
course,
not intervene.
Yeah, do not intervene is what they say.
So what does he do?
He intervenes. So now we switch over to Emily Summerspring's story, and this is Dakota Johnson. And of course, it's not really what it seems, this whole scenario, what's going on here. What the person that she's pulling out of her trunk that's bound and gagged is her little sister that she's trying to save from some sort of a cult that's kind of taken hold of her. And this is maybe an intervention, you might want to call it.
Very much so.
Yes.
At first, I thought before, the whole cult story came into it, I thought maybe she was like a heroin addict and that would play in with what's going on with Miles Miller.
With Miles.
That's not the case. It's like a brainwashing.
No, yeah, everybody's got their own little agendas.
That she's trying to circumvent.
Now, the cult leader is our friend Thor, Chris Hemsworth. I think it's pretty bold of him to take on a role like this because, he is kind of a loved guy.
He is.
And this character is, you're David Koresh / Jim Jones. There's some flashbacks there where you see how he's super charismatic, but it's obvious that he has wooed this little girl, this little Ruth, I think her name is.
Rose.
Oh, Rose? Oh, I really screwed up this week.
Do we know?
This is what happens when I see it 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Do we know how old she is? I don't think they ever gave her age.
I will tell you, she looks like she's 12.
Yeah.
She looks like a little girl. So that feeds into it even more that he's obviously. So at one point, he has Rose and this other little girl fight it out. And whoever
in a flashback, not at the hotel.
Yeah, in a flashback. Right. This is all flashback. This is all. Yeah. And again, this is right. It's all flashback. It's all on the compound. But he has these two little girls fight, and the winner gets to sleep with him, gets to sleep in his room. And so, so you got this beautiful hunk of a man sleeping with a 12-year-old. And she is absolutely, she is hook, line, and sinker in love with this guy. And that's where the sister intervenes and says, I need to get you out of here.
And he plays a really good scumbag, too. He really takes to this role. Dude needs somebody like that to really anchor this role. Like, why would they be so taken to him? And why would they follow him, the girls in this cult and anybody?
Well, like I said, he's hard not to like, even as an audience member. And the vile stuff that he's doing. And you're like, he's still a cool guy.
But going back to the hotel room with John Hamm, he bursts through the door on Emily and Rose. Rose is bound and gagged. John Hamm runs over, knocks Emily out of the way, goes over to Rose. I'm here to help. Emily has a shotgun. Watch out, Mr. Hamm. Boom. So John Hamm is the first one taken out of this movie.
And he is sorely missed. I kept waiting for him to somehow miraculously come back.
And it was a shock because you don't expect him to be.
No, because it really was. Up to that point, it was kind of psycho-ish in the sense that he really was like the first person you really met and kind of followed through. So you're like, this is the lead guy in the story. This is our guy.
Yeah,
And then all of
because
a sudden it's like,
he's the cop, for want of a better term, really.
yeah, he's out to find out Marion Crane, what's going on. And then boom, he gets it.
And not only does he get it, but Miles Miller, who apparently is behind the mirror, the two-way mirror at the time this is going on, gets shot in the face as well by some of the
Right. So Laramie goes down and you hear Miles behind the mirror scream. So now all of a sudden Emily's like, what the hell? And then she looks, so now again you flashback. So now you see where Miles was and how he leads up to that point. So it's all this intertwined storytelling.
So thus ends the story of Laramie Seymour Sullivan. But we didn't mention that while he was investigating the back hallway there, that he's walking back and forth behind Darlene's room and Father Flynn's room, who have rooms that are right next to each other. And there's one very long scene. The whole thing is probably maybe a 5-6 minute scene.
It is all shot as one take. That they confirmed.
Darlene is singing an Isley Brothers song.
Yeah.
And the one take is necessary because she's singing live as John Hamm is walking behind her room and behind Father Flynn's room. So they had to do it in one take just to keep that song solid.
Yeah. It was pretty impressive filmmaking.
And he also sees Father Flynn taking up the floorboards. So he knows something else is going on there too. But
right. And we know what he's looking for, obviously.
Right.
Obviously there's more to Flynn.
So who should we focus on next?
Well, let's go with Darlene then.
Let's go with Darlene, yes. So she's the only one that actually she is who she says she was.
Right. She's the only one that doesn't have a secret. She is truly there because she's trying to get to Reno for a singing gig, and she can't afford to stay in the city. So she stays at this rundown, dumpy hotel. Although it didn't look rundown. It looked kind of a cool place to stay.
It was. It did look like a cool place to stay. I would love to stay there. So Darlene immediately hits it off with Father Flynn. They kind of gravitate towards each other. And when everybody's kind of sorting out their rooms in the beginning, when they're first all checking in, Darlene has some reservations about having a room right next to Father Flynn. And John Hamm, not in his FBI character, but in his cover character of Laramie Seymour Sullivan, assumes that this is because that Darlene is a call girl. She doesn't want anything bleeding through the rooms.
Right.
But we find out that she's going to be singing and she doesn't want to.
Yeah, and that was a mysterious thing too, which she was kind of carrying like rolled up, not mattresses, but like heavy material.
Yeah.
Like she was going to do some serious yoga or something. And you're right. She get, and the first thing she does when she gets in her room is starts tacking these things on the wall. And then you find out that she just needed acoustics so she could sing, she could practice.
Jeff Bridges hears her anyway through the wall. So he kind of goes into a comatose trance as he hears her singing. So I think because of that, that's why the two characters kind of gravitate towarers each other a little bit later.
Well, he also wanted her room originally.
Yes, he did. Because he wasn't sure which room that the money was.
Right. So there's ulterior motives, which we'll get to on his end.
So as soon as Darlene finishes her song, Father Flynn comes over to her room and invites her out for dinner, a drink and dinner in the lobby.
Yeah, we never see anybody but Miles. There's nobody else running this place except for Miles. And even then, it was a running joke at the beginning that he was nowhere to be found. And obviously, we know that he was this drug-addled perp.
So they go into the lobby of the hotel. There's only...
Oh, the vending machines.
The vending machines.
Yes, they're like old-school cafeteria vending machines, which is like an actual wedge of pie or like fresh food that they used to put in the rotating, opened up the glass door, and there's your piece of pie or your sandwich, which obviously had not been replenished in quite some time because everything was kind of green.
Those are their dinner options. So they choose the pie. There's some talk back and forth. Father Flynn admits that he's got beginning stages of Alzheimer's because he can't remember much anymore. And Darlene tells him her story about being a singer in Reno. We find out that really he's invited her to dinner just to knock her out to get into her room because he can't find the bag in his room. So, by process of elimination, the bag's got to be in her room. Yeah. So, but as he's putting the knockout drops in her drink, he turns around, boom, he gets hit. It was one of the biggest jump scares I think I've had.
Yeah, because you know what, and they get away with that because you always do that tight pull-in shot of the character's face. He's got his back to her, and she's all the way on the other side of the room, and you see him pulling the little drops out or whatever. And as soon as he turns his head, man, she just clobbers him, and down he goes.
So I think we've covered pretty much everybody. They all end up back in the lobby, and it's revealed that Rose at one point has put in a call to Billy Lee to tell him where they are. that where Emily has taken them. Because at this point, the money has been exhumed.
Well, right. So cut back to Darlene. She sees John Hamm's character going in and getting shot. She sees Emily shoot him. She's outside in the pouring rain. And before he got shot, he had gone and disabled everyone's vehicle, so nobody can leave the property. So she's like in her car, and all of a sudden the priest comes to, and he comes knocking on her window, and he's like, "Can we talk?" So she stole his gun. She stole Laramie's gun. So she now has the gun to Flynn's head, and he reveals the whole thing about the bag and that he's really a bank robber, and he did time for it, and his buddy died, and 10 years later or whatever, now he's there to retrieve the money.
I'm not really a priest.
Yeah.
So he tells her everything that's going on and the fact that he could not find it in his room. So now he says, "I think it's in your room, and if we find it together, I'll give you half." So now you cut to another scene. That's when she's singing, she's in the room singing again, and she's hiding the fact that he is, every time she hits a note or claps her hand, he's banging on the floorboards to raise them up. And that was a cool scene. I thought that was really fun.
Yep. This kind of fast forwards us to where we are now, back in the lobby with everybody with the bag of money. It sets the scene when Billy Lee walks in with his henchmen. So he kind of, the movie kind of goes into almost like horror movie territory at this point, where Billy is threatening everybody. He's got them all tied up because they're all armed, the cult members, when they come in.
Right, and Miles has got buckshot to his face because he was behind the mirror.
Right. Throughout the movie, we're seeing little bits and pieces on the TV news about a mass killing at a pediatrician's home, a wealthy pediatrician's home, and they don't know who's done it. And we find out a little bit later in the movie when Billy Lee shows up that it was Rose and some of the other cult members that actually perpetrated this, very much a la Charlie Manson. So this is really kind of like Inglourious Bastards, is a fictionalized account of historical.
Right. Just enough to kind of cement it or to concrete it into a timeline. But
so Billy Lee, shirt undone, walking around in all of his glory.
He's swagger. He's got swagger to spare.
He's got swagger. He's got everybody tied up, and he wants to know where the money's come from, what this film is. Because this is like a noirish kind of thing, they use that as a plot point to get all the truth to come out. Like Billy Lee is kind of like the audience representative.
Yeah, well, he's threatening them. He's threatening to take each one of them out until...
But this is how this is how all these stories are kind of
right.
And this is kind of brought up a little bit earlier on, is the management of the hotel. We do establish that it's a pervert hotel.
Yeah.
This is why these things are set up, these cameras and all these recording devices. And I thought that the management, quote unquote, would play a bigger role towards the end of this movie, and it didn't.
It doesn't. Well, neither does the
mystery.
Neither does the FBI.
No,
really. You got Laramie calling in, and they know that obviously he was there for a reason.
I looked at it. It was like the management was the FBI. That it was an FBI honey spot.
Oh,
that
I didn't consider that.
When they brought in,
blew my mind.
When they brought in Sullivan, he was to clear out all the evidence that they were actually there.
Because so how else would they know?
Ah, interesting. That actually makes perfect sense.
It does.
Because Miles, numerous times throughout Miles, and again, he's this dorky little kid, and he's just like, I just do what I'm told. I take the film, I film. Yes, I've done bad things. I've done a lot of bad things, but I just take the film and then I mail it to a P.O. box to the management. That's it. I don't know any connections. I don't know anybody. And so, okay, that actually makes a lot more sense.
And he never sent this film that they're looking for. So.
Right. It seems like it was pretty recent, like within the last, like you said, it was still on the camera. So, right. But that whole scene, that whole Billy Lee interrogation scene, I guess, of them all tied up, to me, that was very Tarantino.
Right, it was. And another shocker is that Emily Summerspring gets it, because he forces her and it was Miles initially to play the game of red and black.
Oh, yeah. So he's got the roulette table, and he's just kind of throwing. And again, even though he's just a scumbag, you're kind of like, this guy's a cool. I can easily see why people are swayed to follow him.
And he shoots and kills Emily, played by Dakota Johnson. So
which was very shocking. That was very shocking. And the sister is okay with it. Like her Billy Lee is back, and that's all that matters. Her sister.
Yeah. Which in any other movie, like maybe that might be the tipping point where the sister actually sees sense.
Kind of snaps out right and be like, "You're a horrible person." No, not at all. But she's a 12-year-old kid who is absolutely taken by this adult who has warped her. It's actually very creepy.
And then we find out from that shooting that Jeff Bridges finally confesses to all that it was his brother and him that did the bank job in the first place, and that he's back there to retrieve the money after doing time. So Billy accepts this story, is about to kill Darlene, and then Jeff Bridges, as Father Flynn, loosens his bounds a little and is able to attack Billy, and they have a fight in the hotel, knocking over some of the ornate fireplaces. So the place starts to go up as they're fighting.
Yeah, they're all like these swinging pendulum fire pits.
Yeah.
Which I guess were really big back in the 60s because they were everywhere.
Jeff Bridges gets some nice shots in with some flaming pieces of wood to Billy's head and torso. Doesn't cause him to button his shirt at all, though.
No. Well, why would you do that? So at this point, we've seen every character's flashback except for Miles. And so then all of a sudden you're treated to Miles.
And now that now that Mike has really blown our minds with this as the management, the FBI, it kind of makes sense who Miles is, in his past. He is.
Now I need to see this again because it makes perfect sense. Mike, you couldn't have brought this up when we saw it?
So it turns out because Miles is really kind of following Father Flynn around this whole movie, kind of like a puppy dog, asking to be absolved of his sins. Because
correct. He truly believes he's a father of the cloth.
I've done horrible things to everybody. It happens. Get the whiskey.
And you assume, what he's talking about is the fact that he's a heroin addict and that he's filming people behind the walls of the hotel. But there's more to Miles' story.
Which is
the vet who was a sniper, a sharpshooter, who's killed hundreds of people.
Masterful sniper, which actually I think elicited a couple laughs. I'm pretty sure that I kind of giggled out loud because he's such a like this little measly, puppy dog kid. Like you just said, he's following the priest around.
Yeah.
So you don't really think that he kind of has it in him. And it was just, and so you see that he's just taking out people left and right.
And then as the fight's going on between Father Flynn and Billy, Miles has the opportunity to get the gun and shoot them. And he's like, there's really an inner struggle going on where he doesn't want to kill any more people.
He doesn't want, he's done, right?
Yeah.
You got one more left in you, kid. Come on.
But Darlene convinces him to do it. Because
help us, she said.
By doing this, he's helping Father Flynn and her, at least, to survive. And he does. He grabs that gun, and one shot each, he takes everybody out. All the cult members are gone.
Yeah, Billy right through the head. So now Rose is absolutely distraught. And that was probably one of the most disturbing, she's crying over Billy's body. And you're like, all right, now we can save her. And then she turns around, and she stabs Miles. Guts him. He stands up, he does the right thing, and then he gets gutted.
But really, you wouldn't expect any less of this movie at this point because it's really brought you through so many emotional turns and twists that I think it would have been false to have Rose,
suddenly like,
Yeah, you're like, is anyone going to live?
Right.
And I was really shocked that Jeff Bridges ended up living in the end because another movie would have to be punished for pretending he was a priest and being a bank robber and all this stuff, punished for his sins of his past. But that isn't the case here.
No, as a matter of fact, he actually shoots Rose and kills her after she stabs Miles. And the weird thing is that Jeff Bridges is such a likable actor that you still are rooting for this guy. He just killed a little 12-year-old.
You know what it is with Jeff Bridges is ever since he did The Big Lebowski, pretty much he has been the dude in every one of his roles to some extent since then.
He just kind of carries
that. That's who I see is the dude whenever he's in a movie.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm blathering about. I've got information, man. New shit has come to light. And shit, man.
Oh my God, look, he was in Tron. Oh, look, he was in King Kong. So basically Darlene and Flynn leave. They collect the money. They were smart enough to collect the money.
As everybody's dead and the hotel is burning around.
Burning to the ground.
Grabbing the money and putting it back in the bag, yeah.
Yep.
And what happens to the film?
They burn it.
They burn
throw it on the fire. Even though they say the film is so incendiary, it is worth more than the money in that bag. but no, they don't take it.
No, they take the money and they're just like, you know what, we're done here. And then you cut to
Reno.
And there's Darlene singing her set, and in he comes, and he's going to watch her sing.
And it was bizarre because he's dressed like straight out of Miami Vice from like
he went full on white suit or whatever he was wearing.
So what do you think is happening at the end there? Is he like her manager at this point? Or he's just reconnecting with her?
I think he said, I would like, he made a point that he said, I would like to see you perform.
But I got the sense that as he's walking through the casino, they know who he is.
They know who he was. Well, maybe he goes there every night.
Could be.
He's now got the money. She's got the money, and she even said, even if I have this money, like I'm still going to sing because it's just what I do. Yeah. But I like this movie a lot. The music really kind of transcends this and takes it to the next level.
But again, you guys had a very unique viewing experience with this movie. You were primed to like it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying before, which is it kind of jades you a little bit because not that you're forced to like it, but I think you want to like it a little bit more.
Sure, you stood in line to go see it, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was extremely slow paced. I think that it could have easily lost 20 to 30 minutes, and it still would have been okay.
Yeah,
because it is a long movie. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes long. So I actually drifted off at one point.
Oh, no.
I was looking back, I looked on Wikipedia to see going through the plot. What did I miss?
What did I miss?
Flashback with the bank robbery. I don't remember that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So it was that section that I missed, but it's so.
Well, that was actually a great scene too, because they're like, "What do we do?" They were like, and he's like, I got this, trust me." And then next thing you know, you see him in court, so he got caught. It was like,
I missed. No, I think that's when I snapped awake, is because I noticed the cigarette smoking man from X-Files was the judge.
Oh yes, he was the judge.
But yeah, it's very laboriously paced. A lot of it, is to the film's benefit, because that whole scene where John Hamm is walking behind the rooms and she's singing, I think that is set up beautifully.
Yeah.
But there's still other things. It could have moved a little bit quicker. But that was my only fault with the movie. I really enjoyed it. I liked the surprises. I liked the places that it brought me. And the style of it, like as we were saying, very Tarantino-esque. It made me think of Pulp Fiction a lot, but it had its own style at the same time. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I recommend it.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it was good. I like the individual characterizations, but Jim, I'm with you that there were some spots that were just a little bit too drawn out. And, that one scene where Lynn and Darlene are kind of wrapping up their pie eating contest and then, going to have a drink, kind of thing. And I'm like, this is taking forever. And we just got into this movie. And then whammo with the bottle. And I was immediately back in the movie for the
that was a big moment, I think, where you're like, oh, all right, where is this going?
Yeah.
So buckets. What kind of buckets we want to give this? Now, we should say, just sometimes as we like to reintroduce ourselves to the audience, we should say that this scale is between a 0 and 5 bucket system, 5 being the best. So how many buckets would we give Bad Times at the El Royale?
I'll go 3.5.
I'll match you 3.5.
There you go.
I'll do 3. I would probably do 3.5 if I was there with you guys on a sneak preview.
It really did kind of take it to the next level. Yeah, like I said, it made you want to like it.
Nice. Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of it as we sort of went through the review. But Jim, at the beginning where you said, how are we going to go about this? That kind of describes the movie, because it's hard to reflect on it in kind of a rational way, because it's just happening. You just have to get in the movie and just be like, okay, I'm along for this ride.
Yeah, the title cards are fun.
Kind of adage where it's very hard to describe music to somebody, like a piece of music.
Yeah.
If somebody else didn't see this movie, I would be hard pressed to sit down and tell them what it was about without either short selling it or overselling it to the.
Because again, like you said, it's jumping back and forth, and so it all, when you see it all done, it all ties together. I did think that the Miles thing was out of left field at the last possible moment, because you really didn't see an out for them. And then all of a sudden you see his flashback and you realize, oh, this guy's like, he's not who we think he is at all. And he's this master sharpshooter and he saves the day. And I thought that was kind of comical, actually. It wasn't like anything they set up prior in the movie that came back and paid off. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, this guy's like a master ninja, and then you're like, oh, he does ninja moves. That was the only scene I think that really was kind of like I laughed. It was funny. There's definitely funny lines. Again, John Hamm's character was great, and I think he was gone way too soon.
There you have it. So I think it's time to visit the vending machines in the lobby of the El Royale.
There you go. You want some pie, or you want the green?
I think I'm going to go for that sandwich. I'm going to take my chances.
Oh, you're like one step above gas station sushi.
And a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family. Did you fail to dress up for tonight's show? No tie, an old shirt and slacks, a house dress? Well, don't give it a thought. We're glad you came as you are. We just want you to enjoy yourselves. Don't forget to visit our refreshment center during the intermission or any time. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. So will the youngsters. Everything is quality and so good. We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. Bring the family. Bring your friends. There are always wonderful new pictures to see, delightful snacks to nibble, a gay, pleasant evening for all. Oh, a word of caution. Don't drive over 10 miles an hour in the theater area for your safety's sake. And Mom or Pop, go with the kids when they leave the car. We hope you have a wonderful time. Come back soon.
So, okay, we're back. We've got our second Drew Goddard feature. Goddard. I'm doing it now, too.
See, Goddard.
We also viewed his Cabin in the Woods, also starring Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, we got a double feature going on.
And I'm very glad that we watched Evil Dead 2 a few weeks ago, because this really draws from that, takes the piss out of it, and a number of other
Yeah.
Because the Cabin in the Woods is almost an identical replica to the Evil Dead cabin, even with the opening floorboards to the cellar right in the cabin itself. So,
Well, I think all cabins built before 1800
have that pull-up
cellars.
door for the cellar.
So you didn't have to go outside during the winter months.
So this thing, again, Cabin in the Woods, another movie. The first viewing is going to be unparalleled. The first time I saw this, I had no idea where this was going. I had no clue how these guys that were in this pristine lab had any connection.
Yeah, it's a really
out
weird
to this
right
cabin.
off the bat, right? And it's kind of comical the way it opens.
Yeah.
Because, you open up with these guys in a lab, and they're joking around, and they're driving around in their little golf cart or whatever.
And it's no different than a conversation that anybody would be having on a Monday at work, between two coworkers. You get no sense that this is anything bizarre at all.
Well, you had the credits, and it was all just oozing blood with these kind of visuals of sadist graphics or whatever, but you don't get the title card until you actually see these guys in the office, and they're laughing and joking. All of a sudden, it just cuts the cabin in the woods, and you're like, what the hell am I watching here?
Yeah.
Written by Josh Whedon and Drew Goddard. I think they wrote this together while they were working on Buffy.
I think this is definitely pre-Avengers, from what I understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is 2012. I think this is something that they talked about.
But they filmed it in 2010.
Yeah, I think they filmed it even earlier.
I think it was
2009.
Yeah,
but it never came out because of the MGM United Artists bankruptcy. So this movie and the remake of Red Dawn, they were held indefinitely until they got their finances in order. And I guess
they should have just held on to that.
Yeah, they should have just held on to that.
Yeah,
so this didn't end up coming out until after Thor was released.
Right. So nobody knew who Hemsworth was.
Yeah. And Hemsworth actually got the Thor role while he was filming Cabin in the Woods. So it's all this weird. And then Joss was involved because I think he recommended Hemsworth.
And it's funny, the Buffy tie-in, because, you've mentioned numerous times the Scooby Gang. These 5 characters are straight up the Scooby Gang.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Hemsworth is Freddy. The 2 girls, Velma and Daphne. Marty is just a pot-smoking Shaggy.
Yeah.
And so that really just leaves Holden, who he's a jock, but I guess he would fit the Scooby role. I mean, really, they are. They even have a Winnebago they drive around in.
Yeah.
So, they didn't swerve too far away from the Buffy franchise as far as setting up these characters. Obviously, they take them in completely different directions as you get into the movie and you realize what's going on.
And even a few Buffy actors are put into this movie as well. We've got Miss Lynn. She works in the lab along with Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins. She's played by Amy Acker, who is famously Fred from Angel. Then we have Tom Lenk, who has played Andrew from the Buffy show. And let's see, who else do we have? Well, we've got Marty himself, Fran Kranz. And he was on Dollhouse, another Joss Whedon. So Dollhouse is a great show. And
that was a one and done season, right?
It was actually 2 and done. They did bring it back for a second season. So Joss, he'll often pepper his movies with people from his TV shows. And that's true of Avengers as well. But yeah, we've got this setup with 5 kids going to a cabin in the woods, which is pretty much the setup of 50%.
Every horror movie trope. Yeah. I mean, it's just
They even meet the harbinger of doom on their way up.
Mordecai, which is such a great right. So they stop to get gas, and of course, Holden walks in. You get the close shot, and there's all these horrific chains and hooks and dead animal skins, and you're like, oh, here we go. And he runs into the most horrific looking old cotter,
who spits tobacco on their feet, as they normally do.
Yep, warns them some dire warning about staying away from the Becker estate or whatever you want to call it.
And of course, they continue on anyway. And it is a very scary type scene. It's not played for laughs until a little bit later.
Mordecai, baby, what's happening? How's the weather up top?
Their blind eyes see nothing of the horrors to come. Their ears are stopped.
That's how it works.
Cleanse them. Cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. Bathe them in the crimson of... Am I on speakerphone?
So then you find out that the lab, these guys in this government facility / lab are watching these kids' every move. They've been watching them from the time they left their apartment. They're watching them in the vehicle. And
as soon as they leave, you got the guy on the roof, and he's like, oh, the nest is empty. The nest is empty. So you know this is all tied in. And all right, places people.
Yep.
They
and
got
the story is that Chris Hemsworth's character, I think his name is Kurt. In the movie, that his cousin has bought this cabin, and I wonder how they kind of manipulated that.
That was doesn't really play out right.
They didn't really explain that as to how that they got them to the cabin in the first place.
Yeah.
But once they get there, they start acting very stereotypically, like Kurt is drinking and being the alpha male, as Marty calls it.
But meanwhile, he was like this scholar, like he's a scholar, very smart.
Full academic scholarship, I think.
Yep, and they suddenly start to kind of fall into those tropes.
Jules suddenly becomes the promiscuous girl.
Who Truth and Dare makes out very hot, I might.
With the wolf, the wolf head.
Or the moose head, as Marty called it. Have you never seen a moose?
And Marty, I have to give props to that extendable coffee cup bong that he had.
Yes, well, that actually comes back into play later.
It does.
And I will say, there's a lot of El Royale crossovers because you have the two-way mirrors, which is an interesting device.
That's the most obvious, yes.
And the tapping, obviously later on, because Marty's the only one who kind of sees what's really going on. He's like, why are you acting like this? And you just think he's paranoid pothead. He's hearing voices. He thinks he's like, oh, we're just, there's a puppet master. We're all just puppets, and they're all just laughing at him. And of course, he comes back, and he was right all along.
He was. They find the crawl space, the door to the cellar that's in the floor.
Well, it blows open.
Door.
So so you see that as they're into their evening and they're progressing and they're pumping in pheromones to get the girls horny. They're doing everything. They freak out because Holden realizes that he can see into Jules's room. Or no, I'm sorry, the other one who's Dana. See into Dana's room, and she's taking off her shirt, and he as a gentleman, calls it out, and they switch rooms. So now all of a sudden back in headquarters, they're like freaking out. But you see they got heart monitors. They're monitoring everything about these kids. And they know exactly what's going on, and they're controlling the environment. There's a pool. There's for lack of a better term, a dead pool of, you don't really understand what it is, but everyone in the lab is now betting money on something. You're led to something's coming, something's happening, right, but you don't really know what it is.
So that when they get down into the cellar, that's when you kind of find out what that wagering is all about.
Right, because
it's all these artifacts down there that they're all checking out. And apparently each one is tied to the way that they're going to be killed.
Yep.
And whichever one they choose is going to be their manner of death.
Yeah, you actually choose the form of your demise. So which one actually brings forth the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? That would have been fun.
But it was the conch shell.
Oh yeah, the merman. Yeah, that would have. Yeah,
so it was so close. We almost had the merman.
And that's a running joke. Holden Hadley, who this Bradley Whitford. He seems like he's in every movie I've ever seen, but I looked him up and I couldn't really find it. But he just looks like that guy in every movie.
Yeah, he's big on The West Wing. That was his big.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, I kept seeing him as Josh Lyman.
But yeah, that was it. So basically, there's the scene is that each one of these characters is finding different props. This constant back and forth cuts of all these characters. Kurt's picking up the conch shell. This one's picking up a necklace. Another one is picking up this diary. And really, the betting was based on who was going to choose the form of their demise. And each one of these items brings forth a different monster.
I am never going to see a merman. Ever.
Dude, be thankful. Those things are terrifying.
And if you look on that wall, there's a whole chart on the wall, the death pool. And there's some really cool, most of them you see at the end of the movie, but there's a couple really cool names that you don't see. Like one of them was obviously the unicorn. You saw the unicorn.
Yeah.
He shows up. But there was the Wendigo, Sasquatch, and a Yeti, which we didn't see. A snowman, which Sugar Plum Fairy, Sexy Witches, Reptilius, and then there was one that was just called Kevin. And I want to see Kevin. But yeah, the running joke with Hadley, which was he wanted to see the merman. He was every time he was betting on the merman.
Yeah.
Which would have been the con.
Chris Hemsworth's character has the conch shell that would summon forth the merman, but it's duped by Dana's diary. And so instead of the merman, we get the Buckners.
The
Not
zombie
Buckner and
hillbillies.
Garcia, but the Buckners.
That would have been great.
It would have been, yeah.
Jerry
Which
Curtis.
turn out to be the redneck zombies.
From the grounds they come.
Yes. So, yeah, there's Latin in the diary, and Marty begs her not to read the Latin, and she does anyway, and that's what actually raises them.
Yeah. And again, Marty's kind of seeing this for what it is, and no one else is really.
As you said, the pheromones are being pumped. The beer is laced. The pot is laced, which is probably why Marty is so extra paranoid, is because they probably did it to him. So first we get Jules and Kurt go off.
In the woods. So the control panel, they brighten up the moon. Oh, I'm not in the mood, or we're not here. So then the pheromones come up. So they're absolutely controlling everything about this, and they're all like gathered around a monitor.
All the men in the office are all gathered around the monitor, waiting for some breast action to.
And the cool thing was, so there was a new guy, and I don't remember his character's name, but he kind of was the audience because he was thrust into
security guard. Yes,
security guard, and so he was questioning everything that was happening. Why is this happening, or why are you regaling in this?
How can you wager on this when you control the outcome?
Well, we just get him in the cellar. They take it from there.
No, they have to make the choice of their own free will. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. It's like the Harbinger. It's this creepy old elf practically wears a sign, "You will die." Why do we put him there? The system. They have to choose to ignore him, and they have to choose what happens in the cellar. Yeah, we rig the game as much as we need to, but in the end, they don't transgress.
They can't be punished.
Yeah.
And so he really was the audience in the sense.
Yeah, his name was Truman, actually.
Truman.
Jules gets it. She gets beheaded by the eldest Buckner.
Not before she got a giant bear trap to the back.
True.
Drag her down. She's in her undies.
It's kind of like the Buckner's lasso is the bear trap.
Yeah, which they use numerous times on these guys, and yet Holden and Kurt both get bear traps to their back, and yet they're continuing to run around in the woods. Like, shake it off, shake it off.
That's exactly what Kurt does. So he makes it back to the cabin, and they try to board up the doors. That's when Marty gets dragged out,
and that was because he found that's when he knocked over the lamp, and he finds the bug.
So Marty gets dragged out the window by one of the Buckners. So, but for all intents and purposes, Marty is gone. And every time one of these kids goes, one of the guys in the lab goes to the back wall and pulls down a big lever, which causes some blood to flow in some other room. All the kids have to die at this point for whatever the guys in the lab are working for. If you notice, when they pull Marty's lever, like a little earthquake happens in the lab. And they say, "What was that?"
Oh, they're angry.
That's downstairs. But what we actually really find out later is Marty's not dead. And that's probably why. It was like, was a false lever when they pulled it.
Yeah.
So we get on a little bit further into this. They all try to escape at one point.
They get,
In the RV,
the RV. Kurt tries to do the hero jump over the chasm. Once the tunnel is blocked through the lab, they orchestrate a
cave-in. Yeah.
So Kurt drags out the motorcycle out of the back of the RV. He tries to do a hero jump over the chasm, and boom, hits the force field.
Which we see at the very beginning, and you don't really know what it was because, and again, going back to Maniac, I'm a hawk, and then the hawk flies right into the force field and ignites.
And then we've got Holden and Dana getting back to the cabin in the RV, and that's the point when Holden gets it through the net.
Yeah, because one of the Buckners was hiding inside.
Right.
The whole time.
So that was a shock to me the first time I saw it. It's like I wasn't expecting.
Right. So now you're just down to Dana.
Yeah.
And the RV crashes into the water. She makes it back on shore. She's on the dock, only to be confronted with the father, Bruckner. So now everyone in the control room is celebrating. That's it. We just take.
They're not even watching anymore because
they're not even watching, and that was really probably the most disturbing. Which was they weren't regaling it. They did their job. They had to sacrifice the 5, but the 5th being the virgin. It
wasn't necessary for her to die.
Right. But she's already at the the mercy of this guy. So fine, let's break out the champagne and we're gonna celebrate and we move on.
But then we get the reemergence of the coffee holder bong, which is wielded by Marty, who is back from
Marty
the dead.
Has come back.
Who actually bested his Buckner, who dragged him through the window.
Yeah, at one point when he's just a pile of goo. And Dana looks at him, steps at him, actually.
Yeah.
Marty's just like, kind of disemboweled that guy with the trowel.
So here's where the movie really goes into gonzo territory, is that Marty and Dana escape back to where Marty was getting dragged to, which is the elevator underground entrance to the lab, to the secret lab. So now the two stories really converge in a real way because Marty and Dana are now in an elevator getting down to the lab, and they're seeing all the different monsters and serial killers and everybody that was on that board. I assume Kevin is in there somewhere.
Yeah, we don't know what Kevin looked like.
So they're in an elevator / chamber that the Buckners used to inhabit. So they're seeing all these different creatures that would be called forth if that's who they chose rather than the Buckners.
Right. Yep.
They end up unleashing all of these creatures upon the government lab.
There was a running side story about Japan not coming through with their sacrifices. And there was a scene, they were looking on monitors of these little Japanese girls, these school girls, and they were being tortured by the creepy lady from The Ring. Right. And they somehow best her. And he's screaming at the monitor, F you, how hard is it to kill a bunch of 9-year-olds? So it's kind of like falling apart all over the place.
Every country had
everything. They were unable to
and they had all failed, and America was the only one that was left.
So this has been going on for eons. This appeasing, what we find out are giant evil gods that came before any of these other monsters that we know about or have in our folklore. And that this is a way of appeasing them. We give them sacrifices. Everything is set up. As long as they're fed, we're good. So that's the whole setup of this facility.
Which can really explain the asinine plots of any horror movie that you've seen.
Yeah.
Like, why are these kids so stupid? It's because they're pumping in pheromones, and they need to appease these giant beasts under the ground.
Yeah,
so the movie really takes off for me when you get to see the reveal of all these creatures come out.
They are just, it is gonzo. It is. I mean, you got a dragon bat, you got a giant king cobra, but it's got to be like 30 feet.
Kind of like the basilisk from Harry Potter.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So, and some of these things are based on actual, movies, I think, and some.
Well, the guy with the saw was very much Pinhead.
Right.
From Hellraiser. The unicorn was just silly.
And then you had the clown at one point was
Oh yeah, the clown was actually
the killer
bad.
Clown.
The angry molesting trees. That was actually on the list. So yeah, and they're just killing everything in their paths. Ghosts are, trolling the hallways and just
So yeah, it's like a mixture of a comedic scene and a horrific scene, because there's scenes that are really disturbing. On the camera shot inside the main lab where our main characters are, you see what's happening in all the different rooms, and you see this one woman shoot herself before
she's actually attacked.
Killed, yeah. This movie walks a very fine line between comedy and horror, and I think it does both pretty masterfully.
Yeah, well, how about even when they were getting out of the elevator, the guy Marty had disemboweled and basically had just mashed down to a pulp. The hand was still moving around. Yeah. And he's like, F you, zombie arm. And then when they take out a security guard, he's like, good job, zombie arm, or whatever. And you see the hand crawling toward the guy laying on the ground. But yeah, Holden, who is so obsessed with the merman, that's how he's taken out. And he's laying there on the ground and the merman just crawling towards him. He's like, oh, come on. And then he just eats him.
And the merman itself is just this ridiculous looking, crawling along with his arms. And then he's got a blowhole.
Oh, yeah, the blood. Yeah.
After he bites into Hadley.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had Marty and Dana basically in the sacrificial chamber. They're in this round room where there's 5 placards indicating each person, and they start putting it together. Dana figures out that we were all sacrifices. You got the athlete, you got the brain, you got the slut, you got the virgin.
And as Richard Jenkins points out, that really Marty is the only one that needs to die, and this would all end.
Why haven't you thought that they were going to reveal that Marty was the virgin? Because Dana said at one point, she goes, "Oh, I don't do that," or "I have never." She goes, "Well, no, I haven't, never done it. I just don't." So you're like, all right, so she's obviously had sex. So I thought that was going to kind of flip it, and Marty was going to be the virgin, but it didn't really play out like that.
And then you get the big reveal that one of the management or
upstairs
is represented by Sigourney Weaver.
Now, how many movies does she magically show up at the end? Like, I feel like this is like the 10th movie where she just like shows up as like a surprise cameo at the end of a movie as the mastermind of it all. Am I wrong? Right?
No, I think you're right.
Right? It just seems like there's been I tried doing a little Sigourney Weaver cameo, and it just kept coming up to new Ghostbusters. But I know that there's other movies where she shows up. Oh, I've been orchestrating this the whole time. But yeah, I mean, Sigourney Weaver, if you're going to get any more bigger cameo, I guess that's...
Yeah, so that's actually, they have the 3-way fight between Sigourney and Dana and Marty. And that's when the werewolf kind of intervenes.
Well, Dana was going to shoot Marty.
She
had the gun. She had the gun right up there.
I was actually rooting for it. Like, let's just end this right now.
Well, that's the thing, is that Sigourney Weaver's like, listen, we've been doing this you are not meant to survive. You live, and all of humanity is going to die because these things are going to come back now. Just take him out. That's all you got to do. Shoot him, and we all live to see another day. And so, she's got that gun pulled, and she goes like, "I'm sorry, Marty." And he sees the werewolf behind her, goes, "No, I'm sorry." And the werewolf just jumps on her.
And you would think that Marty might be like selfless, just to maybe throw himself off that precipice. Nope, doesn't happen.
No. Probably another high to be had somewhere.
Yeah, wasn't it a Cheeks and Chong moment where they just fired up right there?
Oh, I know. Yeah, so the one girl, Bruckner, the one-armed little girl, finds her way down there. She ends up going off the cliff with Sigourney Weaver, hatchet to the back of the head.
Yes.
And they both go over the edge. And so, the world's going to come to an end. And they sit there, they blaze up, and they're just like giant evil gods. Wow, I wish I could have seen that. He's like, that would have been a fun weekend. And it just cuts. Oh, no, you see the giant hand.
You see the giant hand. You see the cabin, and then the hand comes up right below it.
It is a crazy-ass movie. And I know Jim and I have seen it before. Mike, you have not, so I'm really curious, like, what your takeaway was.
I liked it when it all went to mayhem, when they got in the elevator and they were going down, and then all the monsters came out, and it was just an absolute bloodbath. There was blood on the walls, on the ceiling.
Oh, it was.
And you're like, these people totally deserve this shit.
But they were doing their job. They were protecting the earth. You had to believe. You had to go to work every day believing that what you did was for the betterment of mankind.
I mean, you sort of know where it's going early on, because even when they're in their kind of industrial underground office building thing there, they say, this used to be so much easier. You just sacrifice a virgin to a volcano.
Yeah. So again, right. So it really hasn't. It just become more theatrical, I guess. But it's not like a 10th hour left hand turn where all of a sudden you're like, what you've been watching. They've laid the clues the whole way through. Everything from the force field and all this other stuff. And because they start right out in the lab, that it's got to tie in somehow. I think it's very clever. It's a fun movie. It's funny. It's a funny movie.
So what do we give this? How many popcorn buckets?
What I gave 3.5 to El Royale. I'm going to go 4.
Ooh.
I'm going 4. I actually enjoyed it this time more than I think the first time, because I knew what was going in. So you kind of watch it with different set of eyes.
I think I'd go 3.5, something in there. I liked it, but I try to keep my rankings in my mind so I can put it someplace, and I'd liked Bad Times at the El Royale better.
Yeah, I gave El Royale 3, and I liked this a little bit more. 3.5. I'm going to go 3.5.
There you go. Which was not shabby.
No, out of 5, not shabby at all.
Not shabby at all.
So good on you, Drew Goddard.
There you go, Drew Goddard.
Maybe you can email
Forever.
us and let us know how you pronounce your name.
Please.
So this brings us to our confessional.
Confessionals.
And because we had a similar director
the same director
for both of our features, we thought this might be a director-centric confessional, and we've never really posed this question to each other before. So who is your favorite director?
This changes by the day. This really changes by the day.
Really? I thought we were going to have a three-way tie.
I dug deep because I really, there's an obvious answer and then there's a not so obvious answer, and I wanted to go not so obvious. So I want to hear Mike's. Let's go, Mike.
I got to say it. I got to go Spielberg.
Yeah. How can you not?
Right?
I mean, the guy.
Yeah.
From Schindler's List to Ready Player One, I mean, they're all so good. You know, I mean, any type of
Raiders,
genre, make it
Jurassic Park, Color Purple. I mean, even the non-genre movies, Schindler's List.
Right. The Post.
Saving Private Ryan.
I haven't seen Saving Private Ryan. The man continues to just change his game. He's never been pigeonholed, I don't think. I don't think you can necessarily, I mean, yeah, there's, you look at AI and you look at some of the ET and Close Encounters, and there's some themes that carry through. He's got this ongoing daddy issue, I think. He is the premier. You can't argue with that at all.
All right, Jeff, let's see how far out you went.
Oh, wait, I'm going to go last because I know.
Okay.
All right, Jim.
I do love Spielberg. And push comes to shove, maybe he is my favorite because he's just got too many movies in his resume
correct.
that I love. But as a close runner-up, more recent, I would say Joss Whedon. He has never disappointed me with terms of TV show, movie, anything that he's directed, I have been on board with. Avengers, of course, both Avengers movies. But maybe a movie that we'll have to revisit here on the show at some point is Serenity, which is a great, great movie. You can watch the show Firefly.
Yes.
I love that.
I would turn that show on to anybody. I turned it on to my child.
And of course, Firefly, Buffy, Angel, Dollhouse, any show that he's been involved with, I've loved. So yeah. I'm going to say Joss. Close number 2 to Spielberg.
What about Justice League? Wasn't he involved in that?
He was, but not as a director.
No, yeah, I think he was like a consultant.
He probably cleaned up the script with some jokes or some things. I could actually, probably most of Flash's dialogue, I think, was written by Jack.
Is it? You surprised me, Jim, because I really thought you were going to go with Ridley Scott.
No, yeah. Ridley, I love, of course. Alien is probably up there, top 3 movies of all time, but there's a lot of his stuff that I'm just not down with.
Well, yeah, again, Prometheus. And so my choice, they only have 12 movies to their credit. And if initially I was going to maybe we should just choose a director that's under 40, since I think Goddard is pretty young. But then I started looking at the list, and there really isn't. They just don't have the pedigree. They don't have the plethora of flicks. So anyways, I'm going to Wachowskis.
The Wachowskis.
Formerly known as Andrew and Larry, now known as Lana and Lily. They are both transgender.
This is a bold choice, Jeff.
It is a bold choice because here, first of all, nobody can argue that The Matrix was not probably the most groundbreaking movie in the last 20 years. Maybe Avatar, in sense of what they put on the screen. Every movie they're associated with, I genuinely get goosebumps, and I'm thrilled to see their name. Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending. Whether it's a great movie or not, it's the fact that they're willing to put balls to the wall, no pun intended, and try something different with every movie they put out there. Speed Racer. I know you guys.
I was waiting for it. Speed Racer.
Speed Racer is
a fan of Speed Racer.
So high on my list because they just took it. You took an anime movie and you made it a live action anime movie, and it's goofy. It's over the top, but it stays so true to the roots of what it is. Cloud Atlas. Is it a mess? It's a convoluted. Jupiter Ascending is not a great movie either, but I give these guys credit, and I don't even say guys anymore.
There you go. There's the quote for the website. Jupiter Ascending is not a great movie. The understatement of the century.
But I give them credit for just being their own and sticking to their guns and making their own world. Now, the 2 Matrix movies were not that great.
Yeah, can you justify that the rave that happens in the Matrix too?
No. As a matter of fact, the only way that The Matrix Reloaded becomes a good movie is if Revolutions was phenomenal, and it completely let down on every aspect of what they set up in the second one. But the first one still stands. I just think they're visionaries and pioneers. And so, yeah, bold choice. I didn't want to go Spielberg. I didn't want to go Scott. I didn't want to go Cameron. So I chose the Wachowskis. I'm giving the Wachowskis some love.
They made like one good movie.
Oh, well, like I said, they only have 12 to their credit. They got 11 bombs.
Well, let's talk about next week. I'm really excited, not only because the main film is the reboot sequel to Halloween, the 78 Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis.
So we're supposed to forget all about the other movies.
We've got 2 classic features, and it's Mike's traumatic childhood experiences. First, we're going to look at the Trevi Collection, which is an episode from Kolchak the Night Stalker. And I'm so looking forward to watching this episode in its entirety.
What is it called? The Trevi?
The Trevi Collection. If you just look up Night Stalker, which episode, it'll come up on YouTube. And then we're moving onwards because we figured it's kind of, we're shortchanging Mike just to give him an episode of a TV show as his childhood trauma. So
it was traumatic enough.
It was traumatic enough.
Mike also mentioned in that answer to the confessional that Soylent Green freaked him out as a kid.
Cool. Soylent Green. A little Chuck Heston.
And we're going to spoil that one. Believe me.
Well, if you don't, that movie came out already. 72, 60s, 70s.
So
if you don't know the tagline to that movie, shocker. It was a good episode. Yeah. I like both these movies.
It was. I got to get a drink. I'm parched after this episode.
Yeah, it's rare when we get both of the movies that we all like the movies.
Yes. Let's hope that Halloween, it's getting good reviews so far. Word of mouth has been good, so I'm excited. And I don't like those movies, so should I go back and watch the original?
I think so. I think that might be in order if we did that because it is a direct sequel.
I think it is on either HBO.
It's got to be on some channel somewhere.
Yeah,
they'll release it.
Yeah, I'll probably have to pay for it. $3.99. All right, cool, awesome. Right. Another episode down the tubes. Yep. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Bye.
That's not fair. I had zombies too.
Yes, you did. Yes, you had zombies. But this is zombie redneck torture family, see? They're entirely separate species. It's like the difference between an elephant and an elephant seal. There's always next year.